Hello, how's it going? It's 5. It's Wednesday, and we're live at 5. Hope you're all well. Hope you are enjoying outside my window, it's certainly not as sunny as my stories this morning would depict. But we are here for another live at 5, the 1st of May. Not the 1st of May, the 5th of May, but the first live at 5 in May. So it's lovely to have you with us. I've got so many people on board with 5k a day this month, which is amazing. I can see Sammy's jumped in, one of my recruits, jumping on board with 5k May. Listen, if you think that you would like to do it and it's something that you would like to challenge yourself to, even though we're 5 days in, it's never too late. So just click on the link in my bio and jump on board, because we can get you signed up and part of that, and you just start yours whenever you like. There is no pressure. This challenge is a lot about you and about how you make the most of it. I am joined by another guest this week, and of course, I am super excited for this one because myself and Adam connected last year, and I was a guest on his podcast, and must be about 12 months later, we are back and we're going to have a little chat, and we're going to talk about his podcast, life coaching, and this is going to be amazing. Sammy was like, day 5 complete. Yes, girl. Yes. Love it. Share those victories, share them loud and share them proud. So Adam is here. So let's bring him in. Let's see. In you go. A chat with him for today's live at 5 on the 5th of May. Just waiting for Adam to come in. Hello.
Hey, how you doing? How are you? You alright?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, good, sir. Good.
It's really good to see you. You know what I love about every time we catch up, or every time I see a video of you, you're always in this different location. I love it.
Yeah, I try and kind of improvise, really. I just kind of, it depends what I'm doing on my day, and I just kind of think, like, there's kind of no excuse of, like, where and what you should have. Do you know what I mean? Equipment wise, you can just kind of get your phone, sit somewhere and do it. So yeah.
That was one of the things that kind of drew me to your podcast in the first place, and also something that I'm really glad that you kept up, because it does prove exactly what you said, that it doesn't matter where you are. If you want to have a good conversation with somebody and you want to do a podcast, you can literally do it from anywhere.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think, like, it's difficult, starting out when you're doing something new. It's quite scary doing things like this to begin with. But, like, people sometimes overthink what they should have, and they look at what other people are doing, and it's very easy to do that. So I think a lot of times people overcomplicate the process, if that makes sense. And then they buy this thing, and then they think they need to be doing it in a certain place. And, if you really kind of want to do it, you just kind of do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I suppose the digital, like being online, obviously has definitely helped you connect with more people in the last year. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think when we last spoke, we was in I think it was in a full lockdown, and for the most part, most people, we've got like the internet technology, so there's like a silver lining situation where people can access Instagram, social media, and that's kind of what most people are using now, isn't it?
Yeah. So can I ask, how many podcasts have you got? Because you were pretty early on in the process when I spoke to you the last time.
Yeah. I did around just shy of 200 last year, and then I've kind of, I think I'm at probably close to 260 at the minute. I've just got more episodes I need to release.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's just like 200 is like mad. It's completely crazy. But when everybody's online and everyone's super available and wants to talk, and so where did the idea from the podcast come from? I
had the idea for a couple of years, and then I was kind of held back by insecurities, fear of judgment, fear of kind of starting, and I was kind of held back by a lot of that. So, but the idea kind of came around, I kind of like connecting with people. I'm very much, an extrovert. I like connecting with people like yourself. And I kind of thought, with everything happening, why not do it around kind of positivity, mental health, personal development, that kind of field. And I just kind of played around with it, you know, kind of as you do. Had the idea of just connecting with people and hearing their story, and kind of seeing how people got into what they do, and to kind of free flow with that. And that's kind of where it kind of started, really.
Yeah. So obviously it's always really great to just listen to inspiring people, but you've spoken to like some pretty cool people, some people at the top of their game as well.
No, thank you. It's been a journey so far, and I think like when you connect with people, a lot of the time, you know, before I would reach out to people, I would send a message and I would delete it. And I think a lot of the time, you just have to just take a chance and send a message and reach out to people. And along the way, you get a lot of no's. And you know, I just kind of went straight forward, really, to the email, to the social media, and I would just say, you know, very genuinely, you know, would you be interested in doing X, Y, Z? And, you know, a lot of the time you get a lot of no's, a lot of rejections, a lot of no responses. But yeah, I just, you know, I kind of take that leap of faith with it and see what's going to happen.
So I can imagine that the setting yourself up with somebody like you said is already quite insecure, like deleting messages. There'd be so many people that resonate with like putting yourself out there to ask for something off somebody else is scary. And probably everybody's at least deleted. I've done it before. I've set up emails to send out and blanket chat with a load of people. And you know, years ago I was at the same point where I set up a podcast, but it just wasn't right, and it wasn't this grandeur thing of what I was used to listening to and seeing. So, you know, my confidence was lacking, and it was actually something like, you know, it was Live at 5 last year that brought that back. Yeah. But, you know, to deal with that rejection is quite a brave place to put yourself in. Were you always, you've never always been like that?
No, I've never always been like that. I think, you know, what helped me, you know, is working in environments that are quite stressful, you know, and I think, you know, like I worked in restaurants and hotels, and you're constantly, for me, you know, getting pressure from the customers, you're getting pressure from the chef. So you're constantly, you know, I was always making mistakes. And I think, you know, when you get rejected or making mistakes, kind of, it's a bit like, you know, armor in some way. You build up a resilience to it in some sense. And the more you do it, you just kind of get used to it. But yeah, I mean, I never used to be like that. I used to be very kind of withdrawn and, you know, very kind of anxious, you know, and, you know, judging myself, thinking, you know, being critical of myself and that kind of thing. And I think it's just time has gone on, and I've got to know myself more, just to kind of become more comfortable with it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you say you get used to it. I don't know. I mean, I've been like, you know, in the entertainment industry and for a long time. And I always thought, oh yeah, like the more auditions you go to, the more you'll get used to it. I mean, I don't know if I get used to it. I get better at dealing with it, but I don't know if I'm used to it.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Yeah, you kind of get kind of like, it doesn't affect you as much, if that makes sense. Like it's like a sting sometimes, but it's not as painful, you know, as to what it used to be. Yeah.
I suppose with you just asking people to come on and talk, when they say no, they're not, it's not personal. They just don't want to share their story.
Yeah. I mean, I just accept it. I'm like, you know, it isn't for everybody. You know, everyone's kind of got their own style. People sometimes, I think as well, it's very hard kind of getting your foot off the ground, because people sometimes, they like to, if they know kind of, you know what I mean, if they kind of know someone or kind of know a show, then they're kind of likely to go onto it. Some people, you know, I've had it in the journey where people are like, how many follows do you get? How many downloads do you get? And that's been like a result sometimes where they've not wanted to come on the show because I don't get X amount of downloads, or I don't have an X amount of followers. And that's quite difficult to kind of swallow. But the way it's kind of how you deal with that and what kind of how you approach it. I don't kind of learn not to think any less of myself, if that makes sense. If that's their process, that's the process. But I think it's very, very difficult. I think especially today in society, people sometimes are always used to kind of get in their way, or people kind of always want things going their way, and it just doesn't always work like that. But I think if you believe in yourself enough, just keep on doing it, you know, someone said to me, if they keep getting enough no's, and they know they're closer to a yes. Someone told me that in sales. So
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? There's going to be a yes somewhere. Someone is going to agree to you down the line. If you get like 100 no's, there's going to be someone who's going to agree.
I'm reading Shoe Dog at the moment, by Phil Knight, and he had a job selling encyclopedias or something, and he was like, if you get you get the more no's you get, the more chances you have of getting a yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I have the resilience. I don't know. I like to think that I would have the resilience to keep going. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the people that aren't on your podcast. We want to talk about, all of the positivity, which is what you bring from your podcast. But I also want to ask you about life coaching, because you're a life coach as well. So how has that been in the last year? Been in this business?
It's it's been quite a lot. I mean, like I qualified, a couple of years ago, and like, to be honest and open, I'm still finding my niche, and I kind of think like it's been difficult sometimes trying to find people, because people sometimes want certain coaches and certain niches, whereas I'm kind of still finding my way. And I've had a few people who've kind of come forward, and it's been quite good, and I've been able to help people. But I've found that along the way, a lot of people, in my experience, kind of want someone to be in a certain niche, or they want a certain problem to be dealt with, if that makes sense. But
no, I completely agree. I think even when I came across the niche of like approaching men, and working on confidence and stuff in that field, there is still the challenge to find those people who are your niche, and the part of coaching and the part of life coaching is developing you personally, but also developing the brand of life coach, because some people kind of either take to it, or they don't understand it, or they know what it is and they're just not interested. So there's so many areas in which you kind of have to nearly be a salesperson for the industry and promote what you can actually achieve. But I think a lot of it, I don't know about you, I find that a lot of it, I end up, developing relationships with new people and gaining clients because I'm sharing what it is and how it's benefited my life. No, exactly. I think for like, it's a process, isn't it? I think that's kind of like one of the things with it. It's a process, and everyone has their kind of way of working with it. And I think like you said, you're kind of, someone said to me the other day, your ideal client is yourself. And that kind of really clicked to me. And I was like, yeah, it's probably true. And, I've helped people in the past, who've had, trauma and, anxiety and stuff like that. And then thinking about it, I'm like, well, that's something that I've had in the past. So kind of thinking about it, I'm like, well, that is probably an area, but I'm very open to, helping people, kind of regardless of kind of what's going on. And, I think, COVID's been an eye-opener, because I think I've seen people who've been struggling, who you would think that probably wouldn't be struggling, if that makes sense. So I think with mental health, there's no, it doesn't matter who you are, or what your background is, everyone kind of has their own kind of way of dealing with things. Yeah, well, mental health doesn't have any bias. It's not for poor people, it's not for rich people, it's not for anybody specifically. And I think that's definitely something that we've learned most about all of ourselves over the last year.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely been an eye opener. I think like mental health has kind of had a stigma, in the past and things like that. And I think like, with how the situation, I mean, luckily in the UK, we're kind of coming out of a lockdown now, so things are a lot more open. But even though things are kind of opening up, people are kind of having those ripples from the effects of, COVID and things like that. So, but I think, there's a silver lining to the situation. I think, people have really kind of changed their lives. People have really found themselves. So there's lots of different kind of silver linings, I think, to the situation. But I think like, content like like yours and many other people's, you know, it's what you kind of focus on, isn't it? It's what you kind of look at.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, I mean, content and making the realization, and like you said earlier on about the podcast, is just to put it out there and realize that what you've learned along the way from your journey is important, because it will help somebody else. And in the same way that I get helped by the content I follow, I feel like duty bound to pass it on, because it's not my keep when I learn something. So, you know, I never feel bad when, you know, I see somebody who's posted something that I plan to post that day, because they're just on the same mission as I am to share knowledge and help people. I love the birds chirping in your background. So you mentioned earlier on about like anxiety, and was that one of the reasons why you got into coaching or discovered coaching?
I think it's been one of the big kind of events in my life that pushed me into this area. Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, I mean, if I talk about it briefly, like I kind of had PTSD, anxiety, depression, and that was from an accident I had where I fell through a roof, like a skylight. So, but that significant moment was like a wake-up call for me when I was 13 or 14. And over time, it's kind of come full circle, if that makes sense. And it's kind of what's led me, I think, into this field. I've always had an interest in people, but it's kind of opened it up a lot more, I find. You know, how going through mental health difficulties in the past is definitely kind of led me onto this path, I would say.
Yeah. So like so that traumatic experience is essentially connected to like the mental health struggles you went to, and how you began to want to help other people.
Yeah, definitely. And I just kind of tapped more into it as I've been, you know, doing jobs in the past, you know, and working, and just kind of like knowing deep down there's something there, you know, like there's something that I feel inside that I need to work with. And I can kind of connect the dots back now. But, you know, when I was doing certain jobs and certain things, I didn't really know what it was I kind of wanted to go into, if that makes sense. And that was frustrating, and that was a difficult time. And I think that's what people sometimes feel, I think, in life and society. They don't know what they want to do, but they kind of know there's something in there, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I think, like, you know, with my anxiety, I'm quite open about talking about it as well, is that it's never attached to anything physical like that. You know, it's always somewhere deeply rooted inside, and it's only by talking and like having coaching and speaking to my coach that I can figure out where that, like, you know, that I call it like a rope with an anchor, where it's connected to, and by doing that and allowing myself that space is how I manage myself. And I know that I have all of the tools I have more tools than the average person, because I've studied it, as do you. But even still, we still need to remind ourselves of how important it is to go, okay, this tool is not doing the job, so let me see what else I've got.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's an ongoing process, isn't it? And I think, like, you know, we are constantly working on ourselves and constantly learning things about ourselves, and, you know, that's okay. And I think that's, you know, it's what we, you know, focusing on, you know, what we're in control of, and, you know, it's a choice, I think, you know, ultimately because things are going to come up as you go through life, isn't it? You know, like, things are going to come up for you, and it's up to you to deal with that and to accept it, and, you know, to learn from it, you know, and to grow. And I think, like, sometimes it can be a hard pill to swallow, because sometimes we're always right. Do you know what I mean? If that makes sense. We're always kind of have this is the way it is.
I was going to say, sometimes it's easier said than done, isn't it? Sometimes with all the knowledge, it's sometimes easier to say, okay, deal with your anxiety. Come on, deal with it. It's not really as easy as that.
Yeah, I think it's understanding it and accepting it, and, you know, working with it. And I think that's always important, is, you know, like, kind of those baby steps, you know, because for me, when I was going through it, I was frustrated, and I was like, why me? And sometimes people can fall into that victim mentality, Whereas if you just take, you know, those small steps, as long as you're taking steps, that's all that matters. And I think sometimes people want things straight away to happen straight away, and, you know, to be quick. And you have to be patient and to, I think, take those small steps, because those small steps all add up over time.
Yeah. Can I ask you about PTSD?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
What's that like?
It's thinking back about it. I mean, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. So what happens is, for me, you know, I had a full-blown anxiety attack. Basically, I was experiencing the trauma after it happened, and I was kind of like, you know, going in depression. I was kind of having anxiety, and, you know, it's like you kind of shut down, you kind of slow down. And my mum mentioned it one time to me. She says, like, I was running on a treadmill. She saw me in the leisure centre running on the treadmill, and I couldn't even run. She said I was just jogging, you know, just limping, because of the trauma. Your body just goes into shutdown mode. But exercise definitely helped me. Definitely helped me. Exercise did. But yeah, PTSD. It's.
Was there like triggers that would trigger like an anxiety attack?
Yeah, I thought I was going to die. That's the initial thought that I thought when I. Thank you. When I was going through the roof, I thought that this is it. I'm going to die. So I would get triggered. Yeah, I would get, like, you know, wake up in the nighttime, you know, having panic attacks. So I'd be, you know, anxious.
Yeah.
It's you know, I have to really kind of think about it, because some of it's a blur, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, you know, but it was, yeah, I was definitely triggered. I would definitely have panic attacks. It was triggered by groups of people. I remember I didn't want to go out in groups of people.
Yeah.
Because that was a big trigger for me. So if I was in a group of people, I would just start kind of freaking out, and my heart would race and all of that.
Yeah. So is that something that you still need to manage today, or is it something that you feel like you've dealt with, but is kind of grown into just regular anxiety?
I don't have any PTSD, you know, anymore. I don't have any anxiety anymore. But that has been a process. I'm 27 now. I mean, that happened when I was 13, 14. But, you know, I had to have antidepressants. I had hypnotherapy from my mum. I went to see a doctor. I went to see a therapist. So I had all of that. I had the right support networks, if that makes sense, which really helped. And I talked about it. But it's a bit like, best way I can describe it is like getting a pane of glass, smashing it on the floor, and slowly picking those pieces up and putting it all back together. Because I was trying to rewire my mind, basically. I remember just getting a notepad, and I'd never had anxiety prior to that. I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
So I was writing down all the feelings I was having, the thoughts I was having, logging it down, you know, because you're trying to piece it all back together.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a, you know, a slow process.
That's a big task for somebody, like, you know, that for anybody, but somebody, you know, who's gone through that trauma and at that age, which is a difficult age for boys anyway, you know, for anybody really.
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge. I mean, not only that accident happened, you know, that accident happened when I was 13, 14. The girl I was with at the time, she left me. And the next day, she couldn't handle the, you know, the anxiety of what had happened.
So she
that
had
happened.
Her own post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, that happened. And I don't know if I've even gone into all of this on a show before, but so that happened, the accident. I was at school. I was going through a lot at school, and, you know, fighting, bullying, victimization, all of that. You know, negative stepdad at the time. And, you know, over, how long was it? A couple of years after, when I was about 16 years old, the girl I was with at the time, you know, she committed suicide. So I was triggered by that. That traumatized me. When I was going into the hospital, when I was with a med team, there was a guy stood outside I went to school with, and he later, I don't want to be all negative and depressing, but he died of a brain tumor. And So all of these little things around me were constantly triggering me, if that makes sense, and kind of throwing me back. So yeah, it was a lot. A lot was happening. But just over time, I think it kind of made me more resilient and stronger in some sense.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. I mean, I can, you, like you said, you've never shared that before, and I'm hoping that, like, I'm not creating anything that's making you feel uncomfortable by asking the
Yeah.
question, because
No, I've shared it before,
been,
but not on like someone else's live. That makes sense.
yeah, no, absolutely. I know that you kind of super honest, and it, like me, talking about it, it helps.
Yeah.
In whatever, and it helps other people to hear that they're not alone when they have us guys in our lives are especially in our age, and as male suicide is rife, and all we can do is just talk about the impact of how what's left behind, and create an awareness that it's not the end and stuff like that. And I think when I hear about other people in that circumstance, that kind of almost like is a little bit of a trigger for me. But the more I talk about it, the more I feel like I can deal with it, So, that you've been through quite a lot, and I can't believe that you've turned it to be a complete positive. That's so admirable.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate it. I'm really, really grateful. And I think, like, I respect you as well for what you post, and you're very honest as well. And I think, being accountable, for what's going on, and putting it out there, is a big, big thing. And yeah, it's, like, okay, like right now, I just think, I want to try and help other people as yourself, and, that it is okay to go through certain things, and there is, a way out of those difficulties, like it's not a permanent place. And I think, it's very difficult. I mean, very easy to kind of fall into that victim mentality and to get frustrated why things aren't going your way. But like, in the long run, it's going to kind of make you stronger, if that makes sense. And there's that saying, isn't there? If everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a learning from everything. There's a book I read by Ryan Holiday when I was going through like testicular cancer, and it was called "The Obstacle Is the Way," and it was essentially that mentality that things are thrown in your way in order for you to move through them, not get over them, but go through them and work through them. So that's quite an interesting point to kind of bring up, that these things are sent. But I'm always like really vocal on the fact that everybody who works in this industry, whether it's our industry, whether it's like mental health campaigners, whether it's counselors, they've all been through something that has been significant enough in their life that they don't ever want anybody to feel like they need to go to that point. So you say nowadays there's so many people out there, everybody, there's a lot of people in the life coaching industry, but they're all people who've had experiences very unique to them that they want to help other people to avoid.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's a really great point. And I think, like, a lot of the time people kind of get into this industry because, they've had their own difficulties with something in their lives, and, people are, wanting to give back and to help other people, because when you speak to some people, sometimes you just identify with them because you have been there once, you have. I think that's when you have deep empathy and you connect with someone, you can relate to it.
Yeah. What is the biggest thing you've learned about yourself in the last year?
That's a really good question. Biggest thing I've asked about myself.
Can be about the lockdown or whatever, like, or even just doing a podcast.
I think patience. I think a big thing with patience, being grateful for what you have, being patient, and just, I think, believing in yourself and trusting the process. I mean, there's quite a few different things I'm thinking of comes to mind. And just being really grateful for, the people, for me, the people that I've met along the way, like my friend Veronica's in the chat now. And, I've met like really great people. And I think in the situation, I think, being vocal about what's going on. And I think trusting yourself, like in this whole time, I used to be a very big perfectionist and, used to not take certain risks, like reaching out to people. And I would always want to get things right. And I think it's those kind of like steps that kind of all build, if that makes sense. That's kind of what comes to mind. But yeah, I think listening as well. I think the podcast and the journey and listening to other people, I used to really filter out kind of what I wanted to hear, and I think this has helped me dramatically, in so many ways, and connecting with people. And hearing other people's stories makes you kind of think about yourself and grow. So I think, that's kind of what comes to mind.
I think I like that. Like, I mean, definitely from entering into the world of coaching, I completely changed how I spend my time with new people, because I actually spend a lot more time just listening. And it's interesting when you give somebody like you do a space to speak and share their story, which we should all do, by the way, because, and it doesn't matter, how mundane you think your story is, it's worth sharing because it's your story. And that is, has never been more true than it is for me in the last year. And I do that all the time. And I owe it to other people to keep sharing my story, as do you. Like, I mean, there are people out there who will encounter other people with PTSD as well as potentially have it themselves, and could benefit from hearing your story, or have other things that happened to them in their past. And I think, when you give somebody the platform to share their story or speak, it's so powerful to just listen and not listen to reply, but listen to understand.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you listen to understand, you really see that person, and they feel understood and met. And I think that's so fundamental. I think in life, people want to be heard a lot of the time. And I think something I learned in the past relationships, a lot of the time it comes down to listening. A lot of the time, I mean, it's a lot harder, easier said than done sometimes. But a lot of the time, if we just listen to what someone's got to say, relationships, in podcasts, I mean, you can kind of really see what the person is saying. If you're filtering stuff out, people can pick up on it if you're not listening. And especially if someone keeps interrupting you, it's definitely important. I think a lot of people kind of need to really, really listen. Just to act to themselves and to other people. It's that kind of, relationship that you have with yourself, isn't it? And how you connect with other people.
Yeah. And I think like one thing I've definitely learned is, and certainly a lot of people will have learned, is that when you actually live with somebody or you're spending a lot of time in their space, that you really do realize that you have to cut out the distractions, turn your body towards them, make some eye contact, and just take on what it is that they have to say, and really kind of understand and feel their energy. One thing I love, like I have to address now, is that if I'm spending a lot of time with one person, like be it like a housemate or a family member, if I feel the negative energy, I have to talk about it, because I'm so susceptible to it that if I don't speak about it, it just creates so much anxiety within me. And also, I know that it's not rooted in me, so I need to find out where the root of it is and help that person to be able to go, okay, you're not talking about something, and I'm here to listen, so please just use me as a vessel to find out what the hell is going on for you.
Yeah. Wow. I really commend you for that, because I think that takes a lot. I think that really takes a lot for, for some people to do that. And I think that's the best way to do it, approach not a problem, but approach the issue head on, isn't it? Like, say, okay, well, I'm picking up on this, what is it? Let's just talk about it. that might sound quite kind of ruthless or like straightforward, but you know, that I think was, if more companies did that, I think there'd be less problems. If people did that in relationships, there'd be less issues. Because I think a lot of the time, people always just, you know, assuming. Sometimes people know there's a problem, and then they might assume that it's X, Y, Z, and then create another problem. And sometimes it's not, you know, not even a big problem, but what was a small problem is a big problem. And you know, I've definitely had that in relationships where, you know, sometimes, you know, that's where I've learned is that something might be going on, and you know there's something going on for 2 weeks, but you've not said anything. And then you say something 2 or 3 weeks later, and then there's a big explosion, and you're like, oh, what if I just chatted about it straight away, and in that way you described, you'd have a different outcome.
100%. And you know what? I go into schools and I talk to kids, and certainly we do it digitally nowadays, and it's emotional intelligence. You know, if I have the emotional intelligence enough to understand that when I'm around good, happy people, I feel good and happy, because energy spreads like through just like the air. You know, you can walk into a room and it, you know, there could be 20 people in that room, but if somebody is pissed off and there's an air, you'll get it if it's strong enough. So I talk to all of the kids and I just say, look, if you can feel when your friend is happy and you feel happy and joyful and laughing, you're definitely going to feel it when they're sad. So you have it, as much as you have, you respond to their happiness by laughing and jumping on board, you have to also respond to their happiness by going, are you okay? Like, I'm getting this vibe from you. There's something not right. I don't think I've done anything wrong, but if I have, this is your opportunity to tell me. And if I haven't done anything wrong, I'm giving you the platform to speak about it and share what it is that you're feeling right now. And you know, you can see their eyes just go, oh, yeah. Like, and that's something that some adults benefit from hearing, because not all adults have the knowledge of being, you know, and I'm not perfect at it, don't get me wrong. I'm human, we make mistakes, but that's the good thing about knowing and having that emotional intelligence. And like your friend Veronica said, communication is so important.
Massively. And I think that's a really great point. And I think, you know, tuning into that, you know, that emotional intelligence and really kind of approaching it, you know, is powerful. And I think that communication is so vital. And I think, you know, the way society is, everything's moving very fast. And I think sometimes people can sometimes lack communication, or it's misread. And I think, you know, teaching people at a young age, you know, the things we're talking about is so important and such a great thing to do. And I think, you know, going with that emotional intelligence and that energy you described, you know, really tuning into the energy of people and what you're picking up. Because if you've done NLP, right? You've done NLP. There's a part in the module, I can't remember the scientific name, but like your gut has more is it neurotransmitters or something like that in your stomach. And you know, you have to trust that, you know, because it's coming up. And you know, like the energy, you know, we're all energy, as you said. And you know, if you go into a room or you're somewhere and someone's in a bad emotional state, you pick up on that, and that can get you down. And sometimes sorry, someone just posted a comment.
That's Babs. Babs says, any advice on living with someone with anxiety or depression?
Any advice on, I would say, you know, just be there for that person and tell them, you know, if they want to talk about it, you know, they can.
I think I think, you know, it's listen, I've got anxiety. You've got experience with anxiety. Do you still get anxiety nowadays?
I think I think the last time I experienced anxiety, I think was before the pandemic. I think, you know, I think sometimes what I work with that comes up for me is like the unknown. Sometimes, you know, going into the unknown, I get a kind of anxiety, you know, but I know by going through it, there's going to be something good on the outside. You know, I get that now. Sometimes you know, going into calls or interviews and, you know, situations that are new to me. You know, it's pushing out my comfort zone. So I get anxiety with that. That's what I pick up on. But
my anxiety generally kind of comes from over processing the future that hasn't happened yet,
yeah,
and trying to add a narrative to it. And generally that is what anxiety is. And I think if you can figure out a way to root yourself or the person who is struggling with anxiety, if you can figure out a way to help them root themselves in the present, whatever that looks like, it normally is like easily accessed via exercise. But you know, there are people with depression and anxiety who don't want to leave the bed for days, and that's completely understandable. But if you can get an opportunity to bring somebody out into nature and root them in the here and now, and you know, we have like all of these mediums nowadays where you get like, you know, adult coloring books or craft or like making stuff out of clay, when you're actually so concentrated on something that you can't even begin to bring the future or the past into the situation. It's very, very easy to root yourself and kind of figure out how to then vocalize what you're feeling because you're in the now. Does that feel like
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think, like, you know, it's where your focus goes, your energy goes, isn't it? And I think if you're focused on the past, you're going to feel depressed, and you know, you're focusing on the future, you're going to, you know, have that anxiety. You know, because I think deep down we're wired to run away from what frightens us, aren't we? And I think you know, the anxiety is such a massive spectrum, and I was doing a module on this, and you know, there's so many symptoms of it. It could be lots of different things. But I think, you know, rooting yourself in the here and now, in the present moment, and I think, you know, noticing your breathing is a big thing, and you know, kind of feeling your feet on the ground really help, and you know, putting your focus into something productive or doing something, you know, helps. So everyone deals with it in their own way, and how everyone has different anxiety. But you know, exercise is great. You know, coloring, breathing exercises. It depends.
Exercise. Have you ever tried? Is it Iceman Hoff? Have you ever tried his breathing exercise?
I've not. I think I tried it when I was watching his episode with Joe Rogan. I felt a bit spaced out, and I was like, okay, I'm not.
God, you need to go. Literally, there's like an 11-minute. There's two like 11-minute videos on YouTube. One is for beginners, and one is kind of a little like it's the next step. And it's literally 11 minutes. You do deep breathing. He makes you hold your breath, and then you return to you do deep breathing again. Honestly, that tingling bit, that is your nervous system. That is your nervous system reacting to the oxygen you're giving it, and it's just so powerful. So I mean, I would just get anybody to just give it a go and go with it. If it gets a little bit scary, if you're a bit worried about your breath and stuff, all you need to do is just stop, open your eyes, and return to normal breath. It's so easy, but it's very, very simple and guided. And I would say, if you've got that feeling of the tingling, and go back to it, because there's power in that.
Yeah, no, I definitely have to try it again. I'm not going to do it right now because my focus bench, but pass out won't be too good, will it?
No. It's probably best to do it when you're relaxed and you're on your own and you're in a safe environment. But it is really good. There's also like alternative nose breathing, alternative nostril breathing, where you breathe in one, you hold it, you breathe out the other, you breathe in, you hold it, you out, and that calms your nervous system. So breathing exercises are really powerful to calm your nervous system. And like you said, exercise, and I think, you know, walking for, I know this figure, and I want to say it correctly, walking for an hour a day, or running for 20 minutes reduces your depression by 65%.
Really? That's incredible.
Now, I hope I could have that figure completely wrong, but it is quite significant. It is quite significant. It is quite a lot. Like I know it's quite a lot. So, you know, these tools that we have developed over the years of actually going through anxiety and through all of you're going through your trauma and stuff. When you develop these, you use them like just daily, and I think it's part of you know, having a voice like you do for your podcast and being a coach, I think that's where the power lies, in sharing that knowledge that you've learned and the things that you do daily. You know, I have like this big, massive toolbox of things that I do when the slightest thing feels a little bit off center. And every now and then I just like to try and figure out if one of them crops up. If I use one, I just go in and go, okay, I've used this today. I'm going to share something about it. I'm going to talk about it because I know this will help somebody else. And especially in the last year, everybody needs everything that they can potentially get to help their own situation.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's a really great point. I think, you know, thinking about, you know, what you're doing, isn't it? And you know, how far you've come, and, you know, like, if you're feeling something, put it out there, you know, because you know, there might be someone else going through something similar, and it's like an outlet sometimes for you, isn't it, to kind of channel, you know, what you've kind of probably got going on in that moment as well. And I think that's a really great point. And I think my friend commented something earlier. She said, I would say, can you see that?
Protect your own energy. Only then which is really true. If you are living with somebody, or you're sharing space with somebody who is going through a rough time, you know, as much you can only help them. You can only help them by helping yourself. So it's really true. I want to talk about your podcast because
of course,
we set up these things with like big dreams and big ambitions. If you were to have like the ultimate guest on your podcast, who would it be?
Ultimate guest.
Who would you love to ask questions to?
Is it just one person, or is it like how many?
Well,
just
if
one person?
you've got more than one, I'll let you have more than one. It's not no rules in this game.
I would say, I think number one, I would say Gary V.
Okay.
Gary Vaynerchuk, because I think he's kind of like one of my kind of mentors. And kind of beginning of the pandemic, he was doing that tea with Gary V, and he was, you know, saying, just document, just take action. And he's very kind of, not everyone agrees of how he is, because, you know, he's very controversial in how he comes across sometimes. But I would say he'd be really interesting to talk to about his journey, where he came from, because he, you know, he came over with his family, I think, from Eastern Europe, and, you know, he's doing well today. He'd be interesting to talk to. And I think, have you heard of a guy called Jason Silva?
No.
There's a guy called Jason Silva, and he's like a modern day philosopher, and he talks about energy, and he kind of does these rants where he talks about, you know, the mind and energy and the world, and it'd be quite interesting to talk to. I think when people are like, you know, into energy and the universe and the world, you know, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, Gary V, he's very straightforward, and he's kind of got an answer for everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he's no bullshit, isn't he?
Yeah.
So would you be quite spiritual? Would you be interested in the energies of the universe?
I mean, I'm not very, very, very spiritual, but I am pretty spiritual, like, for who I am today, if that makes sense. I'm a lot more spiritual now. I think it used to scare me. You know, I've had certain experiences in the past where I've had things happen or experienced certain things, and I kind of accept it more now, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But yeah, I am pretty spiritual, but not like, I should do yoga, to be honest. I've never really done yoga. I'm not, do you know what I mean? There's certain practices that I should probably try out or engage in, but I'm kind of, I pick up on things that make sense.
Yoga's, you know, there's so much, I do yoga most days, to be fair, and I don't know where I'd be without it, because it just, like, it's 20 minutes, it's quite powerful. I'm no yogi, but, like, you know, I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I can do the crow. That's my biggest achievement of 2021 is being able to do the crow, and that is probably based on the fact that, like, a year and a half ago I broke my arm and I couldn't even do a downward dog. So to be able to put my weight on my arm, I was like, yes, did it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. See, this is the thing. When I did it, I was like, oh my God, yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it's not great, but I did it. And then I was like thinking, 2 years ago, I couldn't do this at all. Like, I couldn't put weight on my arm. I couldn't even write with my right hand. Like, so now I'm like, you know, and that's where you kind of go, let's reflect. let's protect and let's look forward. So protect you
Yeah.
now and protect yourself. Reflect on the past and keep looking forward and put one step in front of the other. So Gary V, and what was the other guy's name?
Called Jason Silva. Jason Silva is in Silva. And if you go on YouTube, he's got a series called Shots of Awe. I think his channel's called Shots of Awe. And he was out in the early days of the internet. He was on Joe Rogan when Joe Rogan started his podcast. So he's been going for a while. I don't think many people know about him. If you're kind of into that stuff, then you'll hear about it.
I'm going to look him up. So you mentioned Joe Rogan. What other podcasts are you a big fan of?
I think Joe Rogan, definitely. I mean, I think Joe Rogan's a big role model of mine. You know, he really inspired me to get into it. I like Joe Rogan's podcast. You know, a lot of the people I've met through, you know, networking. I love, you know, your podcast. I like my friend Agnieszka, Isolation TV. She's got a podcast. She talks about spirituality and energy. My friends who are ex-military, they're in America, called The Left of Greg. They do a podcast on human behavior, pattern recognition.
Love that.
So they're ex-military, and they kind of help businesses and people with that. They're kind of ones that I like. What else? Joe Rogan, Gary Vee has a good podcast. Who else? Mike Tyson, actually.
Does he?
Yeah.
Nice. Do you listen to where do you listen to your podcasts?
Mostly YouTube and Spotify, because I've got an Android phone, unfortunately. But
so when you're listening to them, do you like listen in the car? Do you go?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly in the car or whilst I'm doing work in my room.
Cool. I just always interested because I have to like walk when I'm doing a podcast because I can't concentrate on anything else whilst I'm listening to someone's work. So I'm like, I need to be like out there.
Yeah.
No, listen, mate, it's been so cool catching up with you. It's been so good. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared, especially about the trauma and stuff. And I really love what you're doing. I love just the fact that you just, you know, dropped the higher expectations that you always put in front of yourself and just gone, I want to talk to people. I want to connect. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it this way. And eventually, when someone wants to offer me a studio and send Gary V in, we'll have the budget and you'll be able to do it. And you won't be starting from the start because you waited for the perfect moment. You'll be starting from experience, and that's and all of that stuff that you've learned along the way. So just keep doing it, man. I absolutely love it. Before you go, because this is my podcast and I get to ask any question I want, and because a lot of my content recently is all about Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, and as a man, I have to ask you when the last time it is that you checked your testicles.
I actually checked like last week.
Okay, that's not good. That's good.
Yeah, I do kind of, not like every day or now, but like last week. No. It's important, and I think a lot of people don't, and you have to, you know.
Well, once a month is enough, by the way.
Yeah.
A proper examination of them, and you've got full permission from somebody who's only got one. Takes me half the time now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
Enjoy the rest of the week, and thank you so much for coming on, and I can't wait to see what else is going to come from the Parrosivity podcast.
No, thank you, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure being on your show, David. Really, really grateful for the opportunity, and you know, I wish you all the best on what you're doing as well.
We'll catch up soon. We'll do this again next year. Again.
Yeah, of course.
All right, mate. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Take care.
You can let yourself out. I don't know how this.
All right.
I don't know how it happens. Thank you.
It's all good. Take care.
So there we have it. Another live at 5 here on Coaching the Man. What a great chat we had. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for popping in from New York, and Babs. Great to have you guys with us. We've got Dan. We've got Lee Donnelly. We've got Connor, Charlie, Danny, all of you guys. Thank you so much for checking in. And jumping on board and having a chat. Of course, myself and Adam are on Instagram, so you can follow us and check out all of our socials and what we're up to. And live at 5, we'll be back again next week with another fantastic guest, with another range of backgrounds who is happy and willing to share their story. I can't wait to do that. If you are interested in joining and signing up to 5K May, you can do that by checking the link in my bio, which is very easily found on the profile page. And don't be afraid to click a few likes on things and share any content that you think will help other people. That is what we're here for, to help other people believe that they have the potential to be the best version of themselves. My name is David. You're amazing. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you. Well, I'll see you tomorrow on the stories when I'm talking about 5K May. But for Live at 5, I'll see you next week.